All right. Well, Mr. Sutton, on behalf
Call
of
me Ben.
Ben, of course, on behalf of
My
myself.
friends call me Ben.
So, well, I appreciate being one of your friends. We are very happy to be so.
Thank you.
On behalf of myself and the other museum staff here, we really want to thank you so much for taking the time to come speak with us. Part of our mission here is to preserve the history and stories of the Calvin Jones House, of Wake Forest College, and the town of Wake Forest. And so we just really feel very fortunate to have this opportunity to hear your stories, your memories. As someone who lived in this house, who went to this school, who lived in this town, we're so happy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we want to start way back, your early years. And can you just tell us about, where were you born? Something about your childhood. What was your childhood like?
I was born in Burlington in 1931 and lived in the edge of the city limits until 1942 and moved to the country. And lived out there for 4 years. And in 1946, we moved from Burlington to Mebane. And in those days, young guys, even early 20s or whatever, you didn't have a car. If you wanted to go somewhere, you thumbed. And I'll get to a story in a little while about thumbing, where it ended. It ended at Wake Forest for all of us, where 70 and 98 Fork in Durham, the state guys would be on the 70 going to Raleigh, and of course the Wake Forest guys had the Thumbing corner on 98. And over here, the cafeteria was on the corner of US 1 and the circle around Wake Forest. That was the Thumbing corner. And in Raleigh, when you came back from a date at Meredith or St. Mary's or Peace, you thumbed at the Krispy Kreme corner. And the people at the Krispy Kreme business in the wintertime, if we didn't get a ride, they would let us come in and stand and get warm before we returned to the corner. That was a real blessing because it could get cold out there at 10 o'clock at night. But we all moved around. The boys did, the guys did. And the girls, I think, just had to wait till the parents came or until some wealthy young guy who had a car would come and take them to places. It was interesting. And I look back on those days, and I had two experiences about thumbing. From Mebane on a Sunday evening, I would thumb to the golf course in Durham and get out there, because usually people who picked me up were going to Durham or beyond, maybe to Raleigh. And I would stop there at the golf course and get out. And for 10 cents, I could get a bus across town to the Thumbing corner at 98. And it didn't take too long to get a ride to Wake Forest. About 2/3 of the way over here, there's another road. I don't remember where the highway goes, but there was a stoplight, and that's important to this story. One night, I caught a ride, and if you remember 98 before it was remodeled and straightened out a little bit, it was curvy and hilly, and you cross, I think, 2 rivers or 2 bodies of water. And one night, this guy picked me up, and he was not a good driver, and he was driving fast, and I kept hearing clinking on the back seat. And almost halfway over here, I said, "What is that noise?" He said, "It's liquor." I said, "What?" He said, "I'm a bootlegger, and I'm delivering." And I said, "Driving this way?" When he got to the stoplight, it was red. He stopped. I got out. I said, "I'll walk the rest of the way." But I caught another ride a couple of 100 yards down the road, thank goodness. Another night, I got a ride, and when I got in the car, the guy was real nice. He said, keep your hands on your lap and folded. I said, okay. And we started out, and a few miles down the road, I said, why do you have that rule? He said, look on the back seat. And I looked on the back seat, and I saw snakes. I said, there's snakes? He said, yes, I'm a preacher. I said, and you use snakes? He said, yes. I kept my hands folded and rode all the way over because he had a green light. So there are two thumbing stories that I love to tell.
Were you a student then, or this was before you came to
No,
Wake
I was
Forest?
a student. Had been home for the weekend in Mebane, and had caught a ride to Durham, paid the dime to get on the bus across town. And that was my typical experience of those years from, well, 49 to 52. When I got out of service, I had me a car. And, but
Okay, what brought you to Wake Forest? What made you want to come here? to
Leon
school?
Hollingsworth, he was my pastor in Mebane, Baptist preacher, and later became the chaplain at Wake Forest. And Holly, we called him. I didn't call him Holly, my dad did. Holly would bring my dad and me to Wake Forest football games on Saturdays. And he loved to come and enjoy the company and cheer me on to come to, you need to go to Wake Forest. As he did to a lot of teenagers, but I was one of the few who listened and was smart. So, and this is a naughty story, but I've got to tell it. Holly lived, and there was a house like this for male students behind Gore Gym, down on that corner. It didn't have indoor plumbing. And one night, Holly said about midnight, he had to call and went and got to the outhouse, and somebody was already in there. So he did his business beside the path. And in the process of doing it, the guy in the house came out and he grabbed his ankle and wasn't finished. And he used very descriptive words to describe all of that on the way to a football game. So I've always remembered that story about the man who influenced me to come to Wake Forest. Bless his heart. He was a good man and a solid Deacon fan. Had it not been for him, I would not have gone to college. So I'm very thankful that I knew him. Our paths crossed in that way. Our paths. You know, when I decided to come to Wake Forest, it was late in the time frame that you need to apply and get over here and get a room. And one of the last places available was this house. And it was $12 a month for the rent. And I roomed with a guy from Durham whose dad was a Packard dealer over there. His name was Doug Council. And I lost touch with him over the years, of course. He only stayed 1 year. And then I had another roommate who would not help take care of the room. So I left after once that fall semester of 1950 and found another room for the time until I went in service. But the room itself was small, larger than what it is now, of course. And each room had what we called a laundry heater, or a jacket heater, it's called, a little steel cast iron stove. And Mrs. Overby was house mother for Bostwick Dorn, and her son roomed on that side of the house, the other side of the house, and was the house manager. We didn't see much of him, and he didn't keep an eye on the coal pile, meaning we ran out of coal. about December, January, in the middle of winter. And I would remind him, we need coal. And sometimes he would, I don't know why, but the coal didn't come promptly. And so we either had to buy coal or find another way to stay warm. And each room had those little heaters. We had a bathtub. Well, actually, I went out on the back porch from my room, made a right turn, got to the back porch, and the bathroom was back there with an old, rusty tub, no hot water, and a mirror. I mean, you could go there and brush your teeth and look in the mirror and comb your hair and get ready for class, but that was it.
So no showers or?
No showers. Only that old bathtub that nobody would dare use, and it was never cleaned either. So, you know where the house was located, and it was next door to the law school dean. His house was between this house and Gore Gym. So we went to Gore Gym for our showers, warm showers, and to shave. And, there were two guys who were kind of the keepers of the shower. Benny Pledger was one of them. Benny became a Baptist preacher in Eastern North Carolina and was a good friend all the time that I worked down in Eastern North Carolina. And the other guy, I can't remember his last name, but he had red hair and we called him Red. And he was a good man as well. But they knew what was going on, and it was kind of all college connected with Miss Overby and Hal and all of that, and no hot water. So it was allowed for us to go there and take those showers. And it was an interesting experience because when you got out of a hot shower and step out into the winter cold, you had to run back to the house, to your room. And we did, but that was what you had available, and that's what you did.
And so back, I hate to bring up the toilets or outhouses again, but so
Yeah.
where did you use a toilet?
We had that one bathroom on the back. Well, I think the guys upstairs had a bathroom as well. I'm not sure. I never went upstairs.
Really?
I never went upstairs. I mean, guys up there, they went to class. We went to class. I knew the guy who stayed in this room, and he was a good man and taller and more mature than all of us. And it was not his duty to do, but he took responsibility for keeping things orderly. And I got my annual out and searched it to see if I could find his picture and get his name, but I couldn't find it.
Can you describe the space a bit from what you remember, what this room, your room, looked like?
Well, yes. This was a larger room. A wall has been added, of course. And in our room, we had 2 single beds. The jacket heater, the laundry heater, was on, I think, that side wall beside the door. And it was small, and it was coal only. And you started a fire, and you hope you could keep your coals going and add coal as you needed to keep your room warm. There was no air conditioning or other kind of cool air or warm air coming in. When it got warm, spring, summer, you raised the windows. I'm not sure that it was available, and I never came to summer school here, so I don't know whether it was available in the summer or not. But it was clean, but you did your own cleaning. There was no cleaning people come in.
Was there electricity? Electricity?
Oh yeah, you had that. And there was a desk for two desks on the right corner wall back here on this side, and 2 chairs, and you had the light, and if you wanted a light at your desk, you brought one. And we did that and had a little lamp that we could put on the desk and help us. And the overhead light, and that was it.
What about, so you said you had to clean yourself. What about things like laundry? How was that done?
My dad was in the business. I took it home. And if you had to use a laundry, there was just under the underpass, there was a little place there on the right, and right on the corner was a restaurant. And when I first came, I worked in the college cafeteria up on the corner over there. And I can't remember the lady's name who operated that for the college. She later opened her basement to select students to come and eat dinner every night. And she had two long tables, and you could come in. She'd have maybe 18 or 20 kids come in, boys, of course. And after my first semester working at the cafeteria, I think my grades suffered, so I didn't work the spring semester. The next year, I got a job waiting tables at Dick Fry's restaurant downtown, almost on the corner of Main Street. The corner building was shoe repair, a cobbler. And then Dick's restaurant was next to that. And I worked with him the rest of my time at Wake Forest. And when I was a senior, I had taught Dick to play golf. And he came in September of that year, 55, I'd been in service. He came in, he said, "Ben, I'm playing golf this year. You manage the restaurant." And he said, I'll come in and collect the money. And he would do that every afternoon before we closed, while we were cleaning up, get the money and take it with him. And it was there the next morning. Buster was the cook. I can't remember Buster's last name, but his son is an attorney here in town now.
Shackelford? Was it Buster Shackelford?
It may be. Shackelford. That sounds familiar, so I'm going to say that's probably it. But he was good. He was a good man. Taught me to cook. And Professor Timberlake, Dr. Timberlake, was he had been a law professor and taught us business law. And I'll tell you a good story about his class. But he came in every night, sat at the same table, same chair, and got special attention because he was a good man, friendly and kind. In his class, business law class, he seated the students alphabetically, which put me on the back row. Sutton. And there was a football player in the class who sat midways. His name was Bunny Gayona. Great big guy. I don't know how he got the name Bunny. And maybe I misunderstood it. I think he was from Pennsylvania. He was a tackle on the football team. And Dr. Timberlake allowed him to bring his little dog to class. And the dog was good. He didn't cut up anything. He came in, laid down beside Bunny, stayed the class, and left. One day, and he called the roll. One day, Bunny didn't come, but the dog came. Showed up and went to that place and sat down. And Dr. Timberlake was going through he said, "Well, Mr. Gayona said, we miss you today, but we're glad you sent your representative." And of course the class cracked up over that one. But he was one of our favorite customers at Dick Fry's restaurant. He was a good man.
Was that typical for students to have a job like that in town?
Yeah, Dick hired male students to work the tables and attend the cash register and that sort of thing. And you had different shifts. My first shift there was the breakfast shift, and I hated that one. You had to really get up early. So after one semester, I got the evening shift, and I worked the dinner time. The rest of the time, I was over here.
Where else did students eat?
There was one in the middle of town across from Shorty's, and I knew Shorty, I knew Worth, and the younger one, I can't remember his name, but there were the three brothers operated Shorty's, and there was a good restaurant there. A better restaurant was down on the corner across from the post office, if the post office is still in the same place. There was a street between them and on this corner, and I can't remember the name of that, but that was good food, and students worked at all three restaurants.
Would you bring, or would you ever eat or like bring food back to the house, to your boarding houses?
No, guys didn't do that. We ate there, and that was it. And it was, some others may have, I don't know, but we never boxed it up and sent it out.
Yeah. Well, were the, so what were you doing in the house? Is it just mostly a place to sleep at night and study, or is it like, were they social centers?
No, we didn't do anything social here at all. There's no room because all the rooms were occupied by the guys.
Do you know about how many students were in here?
I'm going to say about 8, 2, 4. And Hal Overby, there was somebody in that room there also, 2 guys. And he was kind of older than Hal. We never saw him. It must have been at the back of the house.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Mrs. Overby and her son. If you could tell us a bit more, what were they like and what was it like having them manage?
Miss Overby was, I would date girls at Bostwick and run into her, and she would speak to me. She was real kind, sweet, friendly. And that's about as much as we saw of her. And I didn't know about the history of the house until well into my freshman year, that this was the first president's home, I think built in 1851.
1820.
All right, I didn't realize it was that old. I was thinking it was built in the 1850s about. But anyway, I didn't know about that. But the guys in those days knew how to take care of a place and themselves.
Did Mrs. Overby, did she rent the house from the college? Do you know?
Yes, she did, and then sub-rented it to students.
We found a quote from Mrs. Overby in an old Gold and Black article about the house being saved, and she says that it's inconvenient and you just can't keep it clean, but I love every inch of it. I wish I could buy it and restore it myself. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, okay. It does. I never heard that, but yeah, and we didn't see her. We knew that she was renting it from the college to sub-rent then to us and others like us. But she was sweet. I mean, I would date girls in Bostwick from time to time, and she would be there as guys were coming in to take their dates to a movie or to dinner or whatever.
Can you tell us some of your favorite moments from your time living in the house?
Yes. I think I found a couple of guys who could sing. And we would get together in the evenings before folks got serious about studying, and we would sing songs. And that was fun. And then when I lived at the fraternity house 2 doors down, I taught the guys, some of them, to sing, and we would go to the dorm if a guy got pinned and sing to his sweetheart. And we had favorite song, Let Me Call You Sweetheart, I Love You Truly, good harmony songs, and a fraternity song or two, and the girls would come to the window and all the other co-eds would come and listen. And we had some guys who could sing pretty well.
And so how many years did you live in this house?
A year and a half.
A year and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the reason I moved out, as I say, the guy he was a good fellow, but he knew nothing about housekeeping. He didn't know how to keep the fire going and wouldn't learn. And it was difficult living with him, and I hate to say that, but it put the whole load on me. And I found another place where I could live the spring semester of that year.
Did you say before your brother lived in here as well?
He did. Bill lived in this room, and but it was, I think, just one semester.
He was older than you?
My brother did. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he may have lived here a year. I don't remember.
So you mentioned some of the restaurants. What were some of the other businesses that you remember from town? Maybe the theater or?
There was a laundry and dry cleaning. I can't remember. It was a laundry and dry cleaning service. And I can't remember where that was located in the town, but I knew the guy who did, the route guy who would pick up laundry and dry cleaning from certain people. If you paid your bill, they'd come back. I can't remember the name of the laundry though. And my dad was in the laundry and dry cleaning business, so I carried mine home.
Was there anywhere to go for fun besides the restaurants downtown?
Well, I played golf a lot, and at one time I shared the record with Arnold Palmer. And I can tell you 2 stories about Arnold Palmer that saved my life, if you'd like to hear those.
Sure.
All right. I was at Fort Jackson during the Korean War, and I had finished my basic training and had my orders to go to Korea in the military of all the wartime traffic. And on Thursday, 2 buddies called and said, "Ben, you're leaving tomorrow and we won't see you again, maybe ever or a long time. Let's play the Fort Jackson golf course one more time." I said, okay. So we played, and I think it was hole number 4, and it was a windy day. And I was a pretty good golfer in those years, and had some lessons or tips from Arnold, and one of his tips turned things around. It was windy, the wind was behind me, and I remembered him saying, use the wind, tee it high. And if you stand this way, you can draw the ball and make it hook, and it'll roll some. And I did that, and I hit a good one. And it was a level, and then down in the valley, the green. And most guys hit short of the brow of the hill. Mine went over because of those 2 tips. And there were 4 older men standing around a ball, looking up, waiting for me to come so they could get on me for hitting into them. And I apologized, and I said, I didn't know you were here. I couldn't see you. And they said, is that your drive? And I said, yes. He said, play through, you're better than us. And we did. And then the next morning, I'm packing up my things to get ready to go home for the weekend and then to Korea on the following Tuesday. The regimental commander came in. His name was Colonel J.J. Watts. Had 2 of his staff members with him, and he came in. He said, Sutton, bring him in here. So I let him sit down. I said, sir, that's me. He said, you hit a golf ball into my staff yesterday. I said, I didn't know they were there. I'm sorry. I apologize to them. He said, that's not the point. I said, sir, what is the point? He said, I want you to play on my regimental golf team. I said, well, I can't. And I took my orders and showed them to him. He tore them up. He said, you're staying here. So I stayed at Fort Jackson for the rest of about 2 years. and played on his regimental golf team. And in the course of that, one day we had a match with another regiment, and who was there but Frank Edens, who played on the Wake Forest varsity team when I was here. I can't remember where Frank was from. And so we played against one another that day. So that's one tip from Arnold. In 2003, I was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma. And I went through 5 surgeries at Baptist Hospital. And I had a dear friend, became a dear friend, Dr. Name escapes me, but he is now the head cancer doctor at LSU. It'll come to me in a moment. But anyway, after the 5th surgery, he said, Ben, I can't operate on you anymore because of your age. I'm going to find you a clinical trial. And he did in Charlotte. I lived in Greensboro at the time. And the plan was for me to go to Charlotte every 3 months to get into this clinical trial. I did it for 6 years. Before I started that trial, I had an 8:30 appointment on a Tuesday. My wife and I went down and spent the night so that I could make that appointment by that time and not have that drive ahead of us. And my cell phone rang. And when I picked it up and answered it, I recognized the voice. It was Arnold Palmer. And he said, Ben, I understand you're going to start on an important journey tomorrow. And I called to wish you Godspeed. I said, Arnold, how'd you get my telephone number? He said, I had some of our old buddies up here to play golf at Latrobe today, and one of them told me about your illness. And he said, I decided I needed to make a call. Throughout that 6-year clinical trial, when I would have trouble or be frightened or unsure, I'd remember Arnold's call, and it would lift my spirits and get me over that little bump in the road. In August of 2012, after 6 years in that clinical trial, Dr. Amin called and said, Ben, you could graduate. And I've had some other small issues, but nothing like that one. So those 2 stories about Arnold.
That's wonderful, yeah.
I think are worth revealing.
So in addition to golf, were there any extracurriculars, literary societies, anything else you were involved in on campus?
No, I was working and going to class, and like I say, I'd had 2 years plus out because I knew I was going into service, and kind of couldn't make up my mind whether I wanted to volunteer or be drafted just for 2 years. So I waited and took that one.
Did you attend services at the Wake Forest Baptist Church?
Yes, I did. I can't remember the chaplain's name, but yes, I did go to services there.
What do you feel was the role of religion on campus?
It was prominent because you were required to take 2 religion courses, and they were good teachers. And again, I don't remember the names of the 2 professors. You took Old Testament and New Testament. And I remember those, I will tell you another story that involves a hymn. Jasper Memory was the education professor. And J.B. Benton had been in service. He was from Benson, and he came back and we roomed together in this house 2 doors down, J.B. He was in the college quartet good bass singer. And I could sing bass or I could sing tenor in those years. And we would sing at the fraternity house and sometimes to a new sweetheart at the dorm. I signed up to take business statistics, I believe it was called. And it was supposed to be one of the toughest courses in the business program. And I signed up, and Professor Memory was teaching that course. The first day, JB signed up too, my roommate. He signed up to take that also. So in the first class, at the end of the class, Professor Memory said, "See you next class," whatever the day was. Mr. Sutton and Mr. Benton, I want you to remain after class. And we looked at one another and said, "What's this about?" The class left, he went over, closed the door, came back, walked up to us, said, "Do you know In the Garden?" And we did. So we sang that song in that classroom. JB did the bass, Professor Memory did the lead, and I did the tenor part. 2 weeks passed, and on a Friday, he came in and laid words down on my desk and JB's old rugged cross. He said, "Let's sing to the class." And we did. He sang the lead, we sang the parts. And then after we finished that one, before we left, he said, "Let's sing every Friday." So we sang hymns to the class every Friday after that, just one hymn. Then we moved to Winston-Salem, and I was a week late because of getting all our stuff together to move that we wanted to keep put in our chapter room at Wake Forest. So I went into the registrar's office and signed up for 2 courses, neither of which required homework. One was a speech class, one was a music class, and decided I better go get me some pens and paper and that sort of thing. So I headed to the bookstore. And when I got up the steps and started down the quad toward the bookstore, I heard someone call, "Sutton, Sutton." And I looked at Professor Memory. He was showing a couple and their daughter around campus. He was summer school director. So I ran across the new grass, said, "Yes, sir, Professor Memory, what is it?" He, and we sang the Wake Forest alma mater to his company. He sang the lead, and I gave him some harmony. And when we finished singing, he said, "Are you in summer school?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What are you taking?" I told him. He said, "Take my course." I said, "What are you teaching?" He said, "Business statistics." I said, "I took that under you 2 years ago." He said, "What'd you make?" I said, "A B." He said, "Take it again and I'll give you an A." I said, "It requires homework." I don't think so. So that's one of my favorite stories about my relationship with a professor. And I do have another one, though, that I'll tell you about Dr. Ivy Gentry, who became the chair of the math department. I had him his first semester after getting his PhD at Duke. He seated us alphabetically. So I was on the back row. And Dr. Gentry in those days would teach, putting a problem on the board and coming along with an eraser right behind it. I took algebra twice, and when I was flunking, I dropped it. So after I was in service, I was a business major, and I took math 24. Can't believe I can remember that. But that was a tough course. But I was acing it. Dr. Jones, we called him Cocky Jones. I don't know where Cocky came from, but he was a professor. He fell on a February day and broke his wrist. his right wrist. He couldn't write. Substitute professor, Dr. Ivy Gentry. We had a pop quiz every Friday under Dr. Jones. And on the first Friday with Dr. Gentry, he did the same thing. On Monday, he returned the papers to the 12, 14 students, and everybody got their paper back but me. And he held up a folded test paper and said, "Mr. Sutton, wait after class." I said, "Yes, sir." I knew what was up. And it had been about like 3 years or so. So I went up and stood by him, and he was tapping that thing on his desk. He said, "Do I know you?" I said, "Yes, sir, you probably do. You remember me." He said, "Tell me how." I said, "I took algebra on you twice, and I was flunking twice, and I dropped it twice." "Oh, yeah." I said, "Give me a problem. Let me do it on the board." He said, "That's fair. Good." So he gave me a problem. I wrote it out. And before I got to the second line, he said, "That's enough. I apologize." He didn't know how I had done a perfect paper for him after having dropped algebra twice. And he stood up and shook my hand, kind of gave me a little hug, and said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I understand, sir." Later, we were playing the golf course. Number 7 is up the hill by the highway. I hit one over the top of the hill. Second time I'd done something like that. And when I got up there, there stands on the green Dr. Gentry and 2 other professors. He speaks to me and asks me if that's my drive, and I said, "Yes, sir." And when we finish the round, he's standing in the clubhouse, and he said, "Will you give me some lessons?" I said, "I'll be glad to." So I played golf with him some, got to know him well, and he came to my son Ben's wedding in Winston-Salem, and we renewed that story and that friendship.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It is. It really is.
So I want to make sure I understand your timeline here. So you spend a year and a half in this house, and then you moved to
another place. Actually, it was down at Simmons Dorm. And I went there a semester, and then the fall semester, then I got drafted.
Okay, and you were away for how long?
Almost 3 years.
Wow.
So I came back in 54, fall of 54, and finished my 2 years here, and could have graduated here. And I debated that with others, classmates and friends and my parents. And I said, "I want to go to Winston-Salem. I don't know a thing about it, and I want to know because I'm going to ball games." And I had met my first wife here, and I said, "She's going up there, and I want to go too." And so I stayed, and then went to Wake Forest and finished in first summer school up there.
So going to Fort Jackson, I mean, that's an abrupt change in your life. What was it like to come back after that?
Oh, relief, because I had good friends that I had taken basic training with who got killed in the war. And I knew that could have been me, my experience as well. I'm writing my memoirs now. And I have lived a life, 95 years of miracles. And I've been bitten by a tick, a rabid dog. I've been pulled off the bottom of a pond, unconscious, just as examples of things where my life has been spared. I had that stage 4 melanoma for, 9 years. And got beyond that. And there have been other things as well. So I have got about 60 pages collected on good things that have happened in my life. The 2 tips from Arnold, for example, are in there. And there are other things that have occurred.
Had much changed in Wake Forest while you were gone?
Not a lot. Nope, it hadn't. It was the same place. And I will tell you about what changed thumbing. This is a bad and sad story. And I won't name their names, but there were 2 guys. I don't remember the name of the dorm that's on the far side of the campus. But when I came back from my experience in the Army, there were a lot of veterans, and there was a lot of gambling, and there was a lot of drinking going on. These 2 guys had been friends. One was from, I want to say Fayetteville, and I don't remember where the other guy was, and they went to a NC State basketball game. And the guy who owned the car and did the driving, when they came back and pulled into the parking lot, he told that friend that you owe me some money. I want it now. He said, I don't have it. Let me go in and see if I can borrow it from some of my buddies. A few minutes later, he came back and he said, I couldn't get it. And the guy shot him and killed him right in the parking lot. That's not a good story. But what had happened after that, the publicity of that incident ruined thumbing. You couldn't catch a ride to Wake Forest because of that incident. So that happened before I went in service, and it's just one of my bad memories.
Right. So when you came back, the school was moving to Winston-Salem. What do you think, what was the general opinion of that, or the feeling among students about the change?
They were excited about it. They didn't want to leave Wake Forest, and I know the story about all of that, if you want to hear about moving to Winston-Salem. My father-in-law, for the girl that I went to Winston-Salem to court, her dad was a Baptist minister and later became the Secretary Treasurer of the Baptist State Convention, Douglas Branch. And the Reynolds family, I think it was about 1943 or 44, now this is the way I understand it, offered Wake Forest College $2 million and some land to move the school to Winston-Salem, with the condition being it would be renamed Reynolds University. And the Baptists turned that down. And then later in the 40s, Reynolds agreed to give them the money and the land, and you could remain Wake Forest College. And the college accepted it, the Baptists accepted it. And the college moved then to Winston-Salem on those conditions.
Did you visit the Winston-Salem campus before you decided to go?
I didn't. I was chasing the girl. And we married, we had 5 children, and then a divorce followed some of that. And then I used my Wake Forest talents, and I performed the lead in Sound of Music and My Fair Lady. And when we did My Fair Lady, I met my wife. She was Eliza Doolittle. No, it wasn't Eliza. What was it?
In which play?
In My Fair Lady.
I think it's Eliza
Is it?
Doolittle. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that sounds right.
All right, good. Okay. Thank you. But anyway, we at this was in a hosky where she lived, and I worked at Chowan College in Murfreesboro. And at the cast party, we danced, and she was a good dancer, but much younger than me. And I was single, she was single. So I said, well, let's go discuss the play over dinner one night. And we did, 46 years ago. And we married.
Where was the Playhouse, or what theater was?
It was a local theater, a community theater in Ahoskie. And we did My Fair Lady, and we had booked for 4 performances and sold out every night. So we did one more and did 5.
So how often do you come back to this campus, and what does it feel like to return?
It is so different, nothing like it was in those years with all the new buildings and expansion and neighborhoods. I noticed that and mentioned it coming into town this morning with my friend. I said, boy, how this has changed. It's nothing like it was in the early 50s. So it's not like coming home anymore, except to this place. And this feels like home.
This house?
This house. It really does.
What makes it feel like home?
Well, just the ambiance, looking at it from the street. I remember so many times when it was on the other side of the campus, walking to my classes, and or from there to go downtown to work and serve other students, or even to Gore Gym. I mean, that was my second home. With the hot water and the showers and that sort of thing. I couldn't believe, as I look back on it, that the house survived with guys building and keeping their own fires burning. But everybody was careful. And I don't remember any accidents that occur with hot coals on the floor or the threat of a fire or anything. Everybody was careful to maintain safety.
Was this house considered a nice place to be assigned or to live in as a student?
I don't even know that it had that reputation. It was adjacent to the campus and close, and guys were spread out in homes all, throughout the community, because the residents here would rent a bedroom to a couple of guys.
Would you visit the other boarding houses, or this is just where you sleep?
Yeah, we would study together sometimes, yeah. And I had, and the athletes, I can't remember the name of the place, but there was the other side of town, I guess it had 30, 40 guys there. You had the house, and then there was some rooms behind the house where the guys stayed. And all the football players, baseball, basketball, most of them, or the good ones, stayed there because they had the food as well. And they didn't have to go downtown to a restaurant and pay for food. I can't remember the name of what that was called. But I remember Gene Hooks, bless his heart. He just died, athletic director for a number of years. I remember him as the third baseman on the national championship team in, I think, 48, 49, or 50, along in that time frame. And I dated in Mebane Jean's niece before coming to Wake Forest. And it was his cousin. It was his first cousin, not his first cousin. And so I knew Jean when I came to Wake Forest because of that, and made sure that I, shook the hands with an All-American third baseman. And then Jim Duncan was a Reidsville boy. I knew him. He was a good football player. And the Trinity, Secrenity they are, Nick and Bo. Nick was the tailback, which would now be a quarterback. They were from Leaksville, which is now Eden. And Nick was the tailback, called shots and that sort of thing. And Bo was played in the backfield as well, but he was not as good as Nick.
So did everyone, when you went into town to one of the restaurants, did you know everybody that you saw there?
I did because I saw them every day. The guys and girls would pick their favorite restaurant and be there for all their meals that they, and the girls would come together and the boys would come together, and there was a lot of conversation, a lot of noise. We didn't play any music or have a jukebox or anything like that. One or two of the restaurants would have a jukebox, and that thing was blaring, and you couldn't visit and talk and carry on for the loud music. But it was good food. Good food. Buster put out good food from the kitchen.
What was your favorite?
You don't want to know. Liver. he did country style liver, and it was really good. I haven't had that in years, but I haven't had any as good as what Buster could put out either.
So when you think back to your time at Wake Forest College, just what do you remember most? What feelings do these memories just evoke?
Family. You loved everybody. You really did. Let me tell you this. Dean Bryan, first chapel service for the freshmen. He stood at the speaker's podium, and the first words out of his mouth, he said, "We have one rule at Wake Forest. You speak to everybody you meet, and you smile, and you call their name if you know it." And I've never forgotten that. That's a good rule. And it was friendly. Wake Forest was the friendliest place, and not because of that, but I think everybody heard that, and whether they had been doing it or not, you kind of got into the habit of calling names and smiling. And I still do that. I go to the grocery store for my exercise now, because I can go there. It's cool in the summer, warm in the winter, and they have carts. And I walk every aisle. I've measured it. My heart doctor says I'm smart for doing it that way, because I can't manipulate the hills and the curbs and all of that now. So when I go to the grocery store, I know all the clerks and employees by name, and I call them and I smile at them, as well as the customers. But you don't get many smiles back now, unfortunately.
So those were all the specific questions that I had for you. But was there anything else that you wanted to add? Any other stories that you wanted?
Well, the connections. You've got, let's see. Let me think. Neville Gates was my doctor, and his mother was Bet Isbell. Gates, does that ring a bell with you? Mm-hmm. It doesn't? She was here for the last time you had had a ceremony, and she was recognized as the oldest alumna that was here that day. Well, Betty Isbell was her maiden name. Most beautiful woman I think I've ever seen. And all the guys liked to look at Betty. Bet was her short name. And then I later learned that my doctor in Greensboro, Neville Gates, was her son. And he was a good doctor and a good friend. Hilda Malden was another. She was a head cheerleader. And Hilda's deceased now. But her daughter is married to one of my best friends in Winston-Salem, who directs the radio operations for the football games and that sort of thing.
So after, actually, we should talk about what did you do after graduating? Can you give us a summary of, what did you do?
Yeah, but let me tell you one other story. I told you how I remained at Fort Jackson and didn't have to go to Korea. Somebody called me several months into my Army career and said, Doc Murphy is at Fort Jackson. Look him up. I don't know whether you know the name Doc Murphy or not, but Doc was from Roanoke Rapids, a prominent lawyer there, later became the county attorney, and was the biggest clown that ever came to Wake Forest. He was a funny man. And wear a straw hat, drove an old car that he had repainted black and gold. Well, I had been at Fort Jackson long enough to know a guy who could pull a string. So I called him and I said, I got a buddy here. Can you find him an assignment? He's a good baseball player. He played at Wake Forest. He said, I'll see what I can do. Well, he got Doc an assignment. And Doc and I reconnected and had some fun, and we'd go out and have dinner and that sort of thing and tell stories about Wake Forest. And one day Doc called me and said, Ben, I'm playing my last game of the season. Can you come Saturday? I said, sure, I'll be there. So I went to the ball game. Well, a guy hit a ball, I think over the fence in left field where Doc had inserted himself as a player in fifth, sixth inning. Doc had a ball in his back pocket. He popped it into his glove, threw it back to the infield like he had caught the ball. And he got by with it. He came to bat late in the game. And he had told the pitcher, throw me, when I come to bat, you throw strikes, I will not lift my bat. His team hadn't done well this year, so he was going to be eliminated anyway. So the pitcher throws a strike. It's called. And Doc has a fit with the umpire. That was not a strike, that was a ball. And he's hitting the ground with his bat. Second strike comes, he does the same thing. When the third strike comes and the umpire calls him out gleefully, Doc reaches in his back pocket, pulls out a pistol and puts it up under his chin. And everybody sees that pistol and scatters. He backs him all the way to the backstop, pulls it back, shoots him in with water. It's a water pistol. Well, he has a hard time. He got a court-martial for that, just to get on his record. But that was the kind of clown he was. He could pull a stunt. And he would do it at football games, basketball games, and just cut up and have fun, get the crowd stirred up.
That is quite the stunt.
It is.
And so you stayed in Winston-Salem for several years after graduating?
No, I worked with my dad in the laundry business for a couple of years, and then a Wake Forest guy, Bruce Whitaker, president of Chowan, called me and said, I'm going to Winston-Salem. I want to meet you. I've heard about you. And he stopped in Mebane, and we talked. And he told me, he said, I've got a vacancy coming up, and I just wanted to meet you and talk to you. Somebody said you'd be an ideal candidate for that. And he invited my wife and me to come down for a weekend after that for a football game. And we decided, no, we don't want to do this. We went to church with him on Sunday morning, and after church he said, let's go to the college cafeteria, and we did. And we were sitting there. Daisy Lou Mixon walked in to the cafeteria. She was the wife of the former president who had died while he was on duty, as president. And he invited her over. She didn't sit across from him where there was a chair. She took that chair and moved it around to the side and sat at the end of the table. And he was telling about his plans and what he wanted to do at Chowan, this sort of thing. She reached over and touched my arm, leaned down and whispered, we need you. He's going to offer you a job. Please take it. And my wife and I talked about that going home and changed our mind. We said, we will accept it. So I stayed there 30 years. Wow. And we got a new president in, and we didn't disagree on a lot of things. And he told me I talked too much, which meant I was reporting some kind of wrongdoings to the board when we would meet with the Board of Trustees. So I left there after 30 years. I went to Fork Union for 3 years, and they were just completely removed from financial responsibility. And I got that one fixed. And then Craven Williams, who was president at Greensboro College and a former football player at Wake Forest, called and said, I want you to come help me here. So I went there for 6 years. And my oldest son, Ben Jr., had worked for Gene Hooks in the athletic department for several years after getting his law degree at Wake Forest. And then Ben started his own company in 1991 called International Sports Properties, ISP, and did the broadcast of Wake Forest ball games and did the advertising promotion. And after a year or so, he got Virginia Tech and Marshall, and then he got Georgia Tech and Alabama, and his business grew rapidly, and he sold the company last week. He's been at it all these years. And I did collections. I never had a deficit at a school. I didn't have much unpaid tuition. And I had an alias, Sam Bass. And Sam was bad. If you owed him money or owed school money, Sam could get after you.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us? Or this has been a wonderful treat to just hear all these stories about the old school, about this house.
Well, you walked everywhere. The guys didn't have cars. You walked, so you met more people that way and made lifelong friends. I still have guys that I stay in touch with. One lives in Winston-Salem. One is in a retirement home in Charlotte. Another one lives in Cary. And we stay in touch. And we laugh and talk and tell jokes and enjoy our friendship.
It sounds like the connections, the friendships have been so meaningful.
I don't think any school that I have ever known about, and I was on the Southern Association accrediting agency for 16 years and visited schools to check them out. all those years, I would go in just in spring semester. I would take a week off and go where they sent me. But there was something about the camaraderie at Wake Forest and the fellowship and shared like and love, boys and girls, men and women. And it stays with you like a brotherhood or sisterhood. It's just there. And I have never seen a school offer it the way Wake Forest does. And I think the other underlying thought goes back to what Dean Bryan said. You speak to everybody, you call their name, and you give them a smile. And if you do that, you can make friends.
Well, thank you very much. This has been wonderful.
Well, good. Thank you for the invitation. I've enjoyed it. It's been good to reminisce and go back and dig out these stories and memories. It really has.
Thank you.
Thank you.